All right, we're live at 11:05. I feel like a teacher now officially. So you guys are going to learn how to glass, and then I won't have to do this anymore. It'd be awesome. I'm BC. We're at Spirit Cars. I'm from Trinity Street Rods. I'm just on loan right now. I'm a contractor up here. So we're gonna learn how to cut glass. And you know how I learned?
By doing?
No. Well, yeah. We had it done at Mount Home, or not Mount Home Glass, North Arkansas Glass, and the owner of that retired, sold the building, and we couldn't get our glass cut there anymore, so we bought out his glass supply. He had an auction, and he was the owner, and he'd been in the glass business a long time, but I bet he never cut very much glass. So when I went there and I knew it pretty well, he spent about 2 minutes and showed me how to cut a piece of glass. I'm like, oh, okay, I got that. Well, I did go through quite a bit of glass before I actually kind of figured out. So I think you got broken pieces. This is not broken. This one's pretty good. But anyway, did that. I sort of learned kind of. Then YouTube videos. They're a good thing. So I watched some YouTube videos, but then basically I did it, and I did it, and I did it. There's a laminate in here, and there's first a disclaimer. I always tell my grandkids, especially for y'all, don't believe anything you hear, read, or see. Do your own research. So I'm the glass expert telling everybody how to do glass now. I've been doing it for a whole, maybe how long I've been doing it? Way too long.
Way too long.
Way too long, 2 or 3 years now. And I've got some, I come from outside the box, so I have some techniques that may not be what the normal glass guys do. Because you know how when you get it cut, there's a laminate between these two. So you've got glass, like a plastic laminate in between them, and then more glass. So the key is you got to scribe one side, turn it over, and you have got to scribe right on top of that. Otherwise, when you break the other side, it's going to be offset. And then when you break it, you got to crack it. And when you crack it, there's that laminate wanting to hold it together. So if you push it too hard, you're going to get, I guess we call it a clamshell. I don't know what else to call it, but it looks like a little clamshell crack on the edge of the glass. Because what you've done, you pushed the top glass into the bottom one, and there was no give there, and it breaks it. So for all you old school glass cutters out there, you can take some acetone or whatever, lighter fluid. Once you get it cracked, it's going to be loose and flexible. Push it down a little bit, you put acetone, and you light it on fire, and it gets it, and it melts that plastic in between them. And then as you push it down, you can take a razor blade and cut that. And I kept catching everything on fire. It's just like, I had to put a new top on here. My thing is on fire, my floor is on fire, my shoes on fire, my arm's on fire. It's like there's fire everywhere. But it gets hot, it works, and it's perfect. You just make sure you just don't put too much acetone. Acetone evaporates real quick if you're using a lighter fluid or something. Gasoline, probably not a good thing. But if you put that in there, and you can do it either way. I'll show you the other way, which is my out-of-the-box thinking thing when we get to that point. Push it down a little bit, just keep it in the groove, and then put a match to it lighter and push down. So this is your piece. Always check your glass, and when you get a new whole piece of glass, a lot of times they'll put some kind of a sandblasted marker on a batch or whatever. Make sure you don't cut a really awesome piece of side glass with all kinds of curves or windshield in it, and then you get it up and look at it and go, oh man. Make sure there's not a flaw in the glass. It's good to clean the glass first. This one's pretty good. I think this one's got it's got a cut here and a crack going through there, and whatever, so unless you're going to use a small piece here, that wouldn't be good. And I need to cut a back glass for something, which was, what is it, just measure 22 by 15. Okay, so I'm going to cut one. You're going to cut one. It's kind of like welding. You can tell if someone's doing a good job welding just by listening and seeing the kind of sparks going, but just by listening, it's got that sizzle. So technically, I think you're going to want to have 3 to 5 pounds of pressure. you're gonna hear when you draw it across, it's gonna be a consistent. If the roller quits rolling, or if it's dull, or whatever, it's change the roller. These come from Cobalt Blows. It's the crappiest, worst ever piece of junk cutter that if you can get anyone besides, cool, careful on that. That would be exciting. I'd have to get the video and we could get hits on that. Gilligan just about crashed into my finale. So you can rotate it, but the wheels will break in there. You might get 2 or 3 that don't work. And if anybody from Cobalt is watching this video, they're cheap, and I don't want a cheap one. They're available, that's why I have them. And you can rotate them 6 times, but you're much better to get a better quality one. The blades wear out. When the blade wears out, change it. These are only like $2 or $3 a piece, so you can't complain about cheap when you're paying cheap. But we have no other options, and it'd be better to get a better quality one. So there's my endorsement for, I love Cobalt tools generally. Cobalt glass cutters, not so much. So I've got one here, it's already marked on 6. So you see how the wheel goes around, it's got markings. It's gonna start on a 1 or just a line or whatever. So this is on 6, which means no, it's only on 4. So I got 2 more to move it to. So it starts on the line, and then keep rotating it so that the number, you can kind of see the roller on there. And that if you feel, even with your hand, you can feel that roller is going to roll smooth. And if that roller, because after you cut a little bit, the roller's going to go ahead and get a little glass in it, and it's going to want to kind of hang up what have you behind you here. I'll do this on the ollie too early. So I use a little bit of oil. I just get oil on it, no big deal. It's good to have your glass clean. Let me mark mine here. So I got a line. You guys want to make a line? Let's just make a straight line anywhere.
What depth should this be set on?
There is no depth.
Okay.
You're changing the wheel. That's all.
Okay.
You're going to use that first wheel until it wears out,
Then you roll it.
and then go to the next one. So to make your first cut, I usually keep this side of the wheel outside. I suppose you could do it either way, but I've just got used to having it this way. I've busted up my hands so much, I've got to kind of, this is probably not the best way to hold it, but it's the only way I can hold enough pressure and push down. Part of my fingers don't work like they used to, so I'm going to want to pull a straight line. It's almost like pinstriping. So pull the line down that and listen to this one as it goes. Now when you get started, try to start it right on the edge. But now there's a good chance you're going to chip that edge. So if you pull up onto it, you don't want to crack the glass going in. So, and the better the lights in here, the better. So you can, and especially when you dropped off. Now I potentially could have knocked a corner off of that, but I didn't want to go up. So there's and it looks like I stayed on the line pretty good. So go ahead and pull that top one. You can go ahead and pull yours too. All right, it requires a certain amount of confidence because you can't go back over it. There's a good chance that you're gonna, yeah, it's just a good chance that it could be get the right pressure, get the right thing, follow your line, start your thing, and then you just pull it.
Right.
So you can kind of break it here or not, but I try not to do too much. That just kind of cracked mine a little bit. And you can see down here where half cracked or not. With the camera, it'll be. So I just maybe did that. Now when I push pressure on this side also, because remember, there's two separate pieces of glass here. One has got the in between, it's got the vinyl or the plastic, whatever it is. And now, the closer you can stay to that line, the better. And as you're pressing down, you might be able to see it thread the bottom of the glass a little. See, this crappy pieces of what happened to my wheel. The wheel just into the hole. So it's not even dull, it just, so we can see how these change. I heard that happen. I don't know if you heard that pop as I was going along. So there's a little pin that holds that wheel. But all I gotta do is loosen this. I go from 4 to 5.
It's not easy.
Tighten it back up, make sure my wheel's gonna spin easy. If that happens, get as close to where, I mean, it's, with the oil there, it's kind of, but you can kind of see where I left off. And there's a high potential that it's not gonna crack down that line now. So put it to the edge. And again, this takes a bit of a confidence. So you can see I've got mine broke. And you can kind of see it wiggling here. Yours is wiggling, don't wiggle it too much. So did it crack just the line, or did you get a crack out sideways? Put it as close to the edge as you can. Give it a, well, I don't know if I give it a drop. Just give it a kind of a bend, breakdown. There you go, there you go.
Is that it?
Is it coming up too? Because you got to break the top, bottom.
Doesn't feel like it's moving at all.
Here's a tool that's real handy. I use a pair of pliers when you, okay, all right. When you go that hard, you can kind of see,
Yeah.
which is fine if this is the piece you wanted. And you're
Okay.
generally going to be breaking off the smaller piece. So you had some cracks go out that way. Not an issue. So you're both loose, you're both loose. This tool here, you can see this has been scored on top here. It hadn't been scored on the bottom, but it's a bevel in there. And then just something to push against it. So when I push that, I'm actually breaking it. So I could go on the corner here. Even though this isn't scored both ways, since I'm pushing like this, and I'm using just a minimum pressure, it may have a tendency to start the crack, and if you start the crack, just put a little pressure and you can see the line run going down as you're putting, but you want to do both sides. Also, I'll use pliers, just tape it up, just keep tape on it, works fine. So if you've got just a little line going for a curve, then that works pretty good for that. Too dark, I can't see. But if you got just a corner like this, see how easy that broke, and you got a bit of a curve, so you can do that. Works fine. All right, so we got that. This thing is probably, I don't know. Remember when rubber plastic bumpers first started coming out?
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, they tore and they messed up, and then they had all these plastic welders, and now they got the technology for that is huge. So I bought this, and then you had to burn a piece of it to find out what color smoke was coming out. Did you ever do all that training? Remember, yeah. So then you try to decide what kind of plastic it is, and you have these plastic rods, and you're jamming it in, and it never worked great, but it worked. This was a plastic welder. So it's just nothing but a heat gun, but it's very directional. It gets incredibly hot on the end of this. So I get it hot. I just go down the whole thing, and actually it gets hot in here in the summertime. You can see how hot it is, how fast that's blowing now. It's more exciting with the acetone though. You can catch the whole thing on fire and you're stomping on it and flames are going every which way. So once you get it to about this point, you get in here and you can actually see it. So I'm actually blowing it apart. And I'm watching it run a line here. It's apart. Otherwise, why don't you try to take yours apart without, and yours look like a pretty good cut there. There's no clamshells. If you just push that down, you can, I don't know, there's a razor knife in here somewhere. But you can just push that down far enough to get a razor knife in there.
I can feel it moving.
Yeah, and so when you push down that far and put a razor knife in there, you can actually cut it with a razor knife. But if you keep pushing that down too hard, that center plastic in there is going to push the bottom against itself, and it could chip the corners. And if you've got a good cut on a good line, I mean, this is, if you look at this is pretty straight. These lines are on top of each, off just a stitch here, but pretty much these two cuts are directly on top of each other, which is what you want, especially on a turn. Otherwise, one's going to be offset. Eddie is over there peeking in. You should be learning this. It's the only on rod building you don't know probably.
I don't want to either.
Me either, but okay. So this, I'm going to cut this, and I'll at least have your window for Ronnie Laura's car.
Okay.
So where they were there, we got this. So if I'm nasty and I got, say I'm way off, and the top is laying over the bottom, or I missed my line by a bunch, or even if I got it perfect and awesome, I still got to clean up this edge. This edge is pretty sharp, and it's just, especially for a side glass, it's got to be clean and rounded. For windshield, not so much. You can urethane it in. It's just got to make sure, you got to make sure it's going to fit the windshield in the gap. So if it's too big, you can sand, but you don't want to sand a huge amount off, because sandpaper wears out pretty quick. So we got this. It's going to be noisy, so you just got to watch and deal with the noise. But so this is a sander. FYI for the in-shop guys, however you do it at home, I don't know if you want. You need to do water though. If you just put too much heat on it, you can get this red hot. And at some point, it's just better sanding with water. Trust me. I put this here. I've got a hard plastic here. But I put this here for a simple reason, to keep it clean. All the sand, there's the glass particles that are on there, and this is going to vibrate some. So as I'm coming to careful that this stays up, I mean, you'll ruin your glass, maybe off. But then if you got scratch lines in there, 3/4 of an inch is junk. So pretty much, kind of rough. I'm gonna pretend it's like maybe going into a class. Paper towel somewhere, but they're good enough. And you can see here, this is some of the rubber that's between it, the plastic, whatever the coating is. You can take a razor blade and cut that off. sand it, it'll come clean. But here you can see the shiny part there. That's not level. I want both sides to be exactly level. And then you can cut this off. And you can see I've got it beveled a little bit onto the outside. I've actually rounded that, no problem. But if you wind up with you can kind of see in here, it's talking about in the clamshell. You see those little areas?
Yeah.
It will get much, if you're pushed against that, it could take an area out like that, just rounded. Looks like a clamshell. And just get it out. I mean, you can sand it way back if you got room, and bevel it a little bit here. So these here I could bevel out and it would be fine. And this too, I'm not going to cut my fingers. I'm putting a lot of pressure there. This, I would actually cut my finger probably. It's pretty simple. On turns, if I'm going to cut this piece right here, I'll cut it straight. First I'll mark the whole thing out. I'll get me a piece that's probably going to be, you know, inch, maybe 2 inches longer, inch, maybe 2 inches longer. Cut it out. Then I will cut this kind of like that. Cut it off. Then I'll take this one, kind of straight. Make this. Then I'll cut this top off. Have just like I did on that piece of yours right here.
Right.
So if I rounded this off and this is loose, I can heat it off, be gone. It's going to have rough edges there, so leave a little extra, and it'll sand real easy around the corner. FYI for our guys, simple. This is all you got to do to change it. And the way this thing is, if you actually change the direction, so the sandpaper, after you use one side, because you're using this mostly, and I bought this from Jack, who owned the glass company. Actually leaks the water out, so you got to put new water in it every idea to cut a plate and urethane it so it stays, or put a drain in it and take some of the old nasty out of it once in a while or whatever. Okay, so that's it. You got it, huh? That's it?
Yeah.
That's way more training than I ever got. There's a lot of patterns on the floor, so before we say you're on with the thing, there's hooks on the wall already. We'll get them all where they go. Some of the patterns have been changed. We got to make sure this is, I think this is a 34. You know why it doesn't say that on there? It does, maybe it got wore off or whatever. I'll make sure the patterns, we'll get together and we'll organize that. And it's my mess, so I'm leaving you my mess.
Yeah.
But if you need a hand, I'll come help.
Yes.
And I'm gonna leave you a much better mess before we're done. I like Trigger Time the best of all these things. And I got a grand finale for Trigger Time today. I'm not sure if it's gonna apply, but I'll try it. I'll do my best to make it apply, just because it's a good finale. I'm just gonna read a psalm. Psalms are good. And Psalms, sometimes you just got to David or whoever is just like singing out to the Lord and going, it's like questioning life. I mean, it's easy. Like, oh my God, what is going on here today? This is what's crushing me down, or this is whatever. So anyway, this is 62, Psalm 62. Let me make sure. This will work. They're all good. They're all good, so you're going to get this one, whether you like it or not. For God alone my soul awaits in silence. From him comes my salvation. He only is my rock and my salvation, my fortress. I shall not be greatly moved. How long will you set upon a man to shatter him, all of you, like a leaning wall, a towering fence? They only plan to thrust him down from his eminence. They take pleasure in falsehood. They bless with their mouths, but inwardly they curse. For God alone my soul waits in silence, for my hope is in him, is from him. He only is my rock and my salvation, my fortress. I shall not be shaken. My God, or on God rests my deliverance and my honor. My mighty rock, my refuge is God. Trust in him at all times, O people. Pour out your heart before him. God is a refuge for us. Men of low estate are but a breath. Men of high esteem are a delusion. In the balances, they go up. They are together lighter than a breath. But put no confidence in extortion. Set no vain hopes on robbery. If riches increase, set not your heart on them. Once God has spoken, twice have I heard this, that power belongs to God, and that to thee, O Lord, belongs steadfast love. For thou dost requite a man according to his works. So how does the finale apply to this? This stuff's pretty solid. Is this the one I'm using? No, this is the one I'm using. So, it's a safety glass. I brought a hammer here, did I not? Eddie had a hammer. I did bring it now. Oh yeah, here we go. And it just, you can bash it. Really, I mean, there you go. It'll put some marks on your head, but you won't go through. I've got another piece that'll cut into shards and you can use it for a weapon. This, I could slap you around with it, but it's not going to cut you to pieces. The hole's pretty good. But we still shatter. No matter how tough we are inside, what we got going on, we can still bust. This is tempered safety glass. We don't even try to, it's tempered, don't even try to cut it. It's hard. I mean, you might think this stuff is, and you may try to break a side glass to get out. I mean, they got special tools that knock it. And if you just knock it in the right spot, with just a little force, have you ever seen safety glass break? It's pretty cool. This is tempered. This is tempered, it's hard. It's harder than normal. You can feel, when you pick this up, it's got like a, you can tell it's wound tight. Whatever the molecules are in there. Sometimes if you just touch the side, it kind of explodes.
Oops.
I won't leave my mess, I don't think. We'll see. It was worth the experiment. That's about how fragile we are. If you think you're something, if you think you're strong, if you think you got it together, if we are, no. That's how easily, that's where we're at. I mean, some of us might be, you know, tough enough to take a good whack and still at least be together. Strength and your help and your, anything, put it in God, because other than that, the world will just smash us to little pieces, and putting that back together, Humpty Dumpty wouldn't have a chance. That's it for today. Today's Friday, right?
Yes, sir.
We're gonna have a good weekend. I'm gonna have a great No More Cutting Glass life. I'll be up here if you guys need help, and we'll get all that sorted out, and we'll see you Monday.